It has only been in recent years that it has occurred to me that I need to consider me. I've always considered everybody around me. I've always considered the loved ones, the family members, the extension. And so, yeah, when I would make decisions about myself, it wasn't from the perspective that there was value.
Welcome to Coffee Break, where we invite you to walk on the path of self-discovery with us. I'm Liz, joined by my co-hosts Fatima and Grace. We're three women from different walks of life, united by our passion for purposeful living, authentic connection, and service to others. Welcome to Season 2, where we are thrilled to introduce you to guests we call disruptors, individuals who faced major turning points in their lives and weren't afraid to challenge the systems around them. They remained hopeful in the face of hardship, paved their own paths, and positively inspired others along the way.
What I said to myself was, trust yourself, because that hasn't always been easy. But then when I look back on it, from the decision with my kidneys, from healing myself from type 2 diabetes, all of it took profound trust in my decision making.
Meet Tomika Rayford, a true embodiment of resilience and hope for those facing seemingly insurmountable health challenges. Raised in Selma, Alabama, Tomika's life was shaped by the challenges of underserved communities. For 25 years, she thrived in logistics and planning, but her most profound transformation began with a battle against kidney failure, end-stage renal disease, and later type 2 diabetes. Tomika's journey is not just about overcoming illness, it's about reclaiming agency over one's health and inspiring others to do the same. Her story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of holistic healing.
Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button so that you're updated on our latest episodes. Enjoy today's conversation.
Today, we are so excited to get started with our season 2 of the Coffee Break, and we have a wonderful season ahead of us. My name is Fatima. I'm a mother of 5 kids. I have a background in sales and education, and I am so excited to be connected here with everybody on the podcast today.
This is Grace here today. If this is your first time listening in on our podcast, I'll just introduce myself a little bit. I am a Korean American, I am a millennial, and I'm doing this podcast with Fatima and Liz, finding people who are good-hearted, finding people who are growth-minded. And season 2 is all about highlighting those people in different communities. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. And we have Liz here.
My name is Liz. I am a co-host on the podcast as well, and I'm so excited to be here today. Season 2, we're focused on ordinary people who have done extraordinary things, and one of those extraordinary things that we've found common to be amongst our guests so far is that they've all been disruptors. Not only have they noticed things that are not working in the systems today, but they have taken action and are making huge waves in their worlds. So excited to have Tomika Rayford here with us today. And Fatima, you and Tomika are close friends.
I am so grateful that God has blessed me to place so many wonderful different types of people in my life. And so Tamika and I met in high school. We knew of each other most of our high school career, but we didn't really connect until our senior year. And something very huge happened at our high school, as you might imagine, growing up. I mean, having a high school in Selma, Alabama, that actually not just impacted locally, not even just in America, but it actually became a global phenomenon. And through that, we really learned a lot about ourselves, about other people. And then we had a long break of not being in touch until I guess Facebook united us, I'd say 10 years ago. And we've connected and kept in touch. And we're really ideologists together. We love to share ideas and good books that we've read. And did you hear? So our conversations are rarely about the weather. They're usually about some concept that one of us has discovered that we want to make sure that the other one has. And so current events and things like that. And so I've always been inspired by her because in high school, she would walk through the school with such assurance and confidence and she really just was a grown woman from day one, really. I mean, seriously, she was grown. And, she left Selma and she built a life for herself on her own with not a lot of family support or resources. And she was able to build a corporate career that very accomplished. But what she did that's even more special than all of those accolades is that she decided one day, hey, I want to live my life differently and I want to take some risk. And so she decided way earlier than retirement age to retire herself from her corporate position and take a huge leap of faith and focus on her health and primarily help Black and brown people focus on their health. And so I was telling Grace and Liz that we don't have to do much on this podcast because Tomika is a phenomenal storyteller. So we just want you to I want you to tell the story of how Tomika came to be, and especially that powerful story that your book is going to be based on.
Oh, wow. So hi, I am Tomika. And Liz, by the way, you're one of the few people that I've ever heard say my name and say it properly.
Oh,
I
really?
still don't say it right. She's still trying to get.
Yeah.
How do people usually say it?
Very few people will say Tomika. Yeah, Tomika. It is Tom. It's Tomika. And I was like, oh my gosh, she nailed it. So thank you for that.
I'm glad.
I don't know why that's a big deal to me, but
Well, same with me, and I still say your name wrong. And people say me Fatima. Well, I don't mind Fatima because that's my name, but Fatima is the one.
Absolutely. This is so exciting. You guys have built a great big thing here, the Nexus experience. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. I know Fatima gave a really general introduction of how you met and your story. Can we hear a little bit about when you chose to leave corporate and kind of embark on this separate journey? Like what was the catalyst for that and what did that look like at that time?
I don't think it was any one particular thing to be on the cusp of change to go with it. And a lot of people resist change. They suffer for their inability to change. And what's interesting is I knew my career was ending in supply chains and logistics. What happened during the pandemic is the world changed and there became a great demand for the need for people that are proficient in supply chain logistics, unlocking gridlock things, getting shipments. We had so much to become gridlocked with overseas trade and things of that nature. And that's really what I spent the last 24 years doing. It was my niche, right? And you would think in this environment where there's such a demand for that kind of talent out there, that I would have stepped into doing more of that, right? But something had shifted inside of me and I knew that wasn't my future anymore. I had a serious health crisis 20 years ago this year, actually. I was in stage 4 kidney failure, and I was also grieving. I had lost a close relative to violence in Selma, and all those things kind of converged in my life. I was in the hospital when that tragedy occurred, fighting for my own life. I was in complete system failure. And the end of that was basically, I had stage 4 renal disease. And I was instructed to go on dialysis or die. And I was 32 years old at the time. And I declined. I said I'd rather die. And
why is that, for the purpose of the audience? What is dialysis and why were you against?
So stage 4 or end stage renal disease is basically saying that your kidneys are no longer functioning. They're no longer cleaning your body as kidneys are designed to do. Stage 4 is known as end stage. Basically, there's no functionality. You would need the assistance of going on a dialysis machine to do the job your kidneys is designed to do. Your kidneys are designed to do. that function wasn't happening in my body anymore. I inquired with the team about what life looked like on dialysis. That wasn't something I was overly familiar with. They told me that I would have to go to a facility 3 times a week and be put on a machine that basically cleaned my blood. And that procedure will probably, at my state of health at that time, give me another 5 to 7 years of life. And I just really quick calculations in my head, you can't work going to dialysis 3 times a week. It was a major disruption. I was going to be dependent on someone else's help. And I was like, we're not extending this thing. I'm not going on dialysis. I'll take option B. And I decided to die. Well, ultimately, that decision saved my life. That surrender, that ability to stand on the cups of change and say, all right, I'm not going to fight this. I'm not going to swim against the tide. I'm just going to relax and let it flow. One of the people on the team of doctors that I had for the different systems, she was a renal doctor, but she told me that she had a minor in holistic health and that she wanted to work with me. And I was like, well, sure. I've already decided to die. What else? And I asked a few questions like, will I have to go on dialysis? Will I have to take medications? And she told me that I would not. The only thing I needed to do was come and see her once a week, every week, and give her some urine and some blood. And she gave me a special diet. And a year later, I went to see her and she said, your kidneys are functioning again. And that was 20 years ago this year.
Wow.
And what's so amazing about her being ahead of her time is that since then, so much research has come out that, dialysis have become big money for people to profit in lower income, especially African American communities. So they're pushing people towards dialysis as opposed to holistic health, natural ways
To
cure them.
heal. Yeah.
So I want to
That's
just
true.
go right back to that moment that you're in the bed and someone says to you, hey, dialysis or die. Do you remember that emotion that you felt?
I do. Strangely enough, I was the only one without emotion. My mother and my aunt and my mother's best friend were all in the room, in the hospital room with me. And I think what the doctors was telling them, they were trying to catch up really fast to understand what renal failure is, how you have to get there. And it was my declining that sent them into a meltdown of emotion. My decision in stating very emphatically that I'd rather die than live like that was the thing my mom couldn't grasp, my aunt. No, they just couldn't deal with that. But I was just like, it was just a matter of fact decision. It was a knowing that I can't describe. Like I knew that was the decision and I wasn't going to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't frightened. So sometimes, particularly with the Christians I know in my life, the church family people that I know in my life, a lot of people say they make that decision. Oh, I know God will heal me. I know God will take care of me. I have so much faith that I'll be okay. There was a complete absence of that. There was no consideration that I had any special license with God and that God would save my life. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about a faith, a belief, or even that I had a right to any additional life. I was like, I don't have any kids. I'm not married. I'm out. So no, it was not a faithful decision. It was not I don't know. I didn't think about the decision. I just made it.
So fast forward, it's been a year and you've been healed. So then what happened next?
I went back to life as normal. I learned absolutely nothing from that experience. I went through this experience in grief. For the entirety of that year, I was grieving the loss of a loved one. And I felt like I went through it in a daze or a haze, I was literally non-resistant. So if anything she instructed me to do, I did. So one of the things she was very emphatic about, there was too much protein in my urine. I had to go and see her every week, and I had to give her blood and urine. And she said, there's too much protein in your urine. And I was like, what does that mean? She said, you can no longer have anything from an animal. If it's derived from an animal, you can't have it. Human organs weren't meant to process animal protein. So you can't have meat, you can't have dairy, you can't have seafood, you can't have any animal derived protein. Your kidneys are too vulnerable for that. And that day, cold turkey, the day she told me, pardon the pun, I stopped consuming any animal protein, and it was not difficult. I just did it. I was done. There was no more egg and no more ice cream and anything, no more dairy, just yogurt, nothing. It was all done that day. And when she told me my kidneys were okay, I went right back to all of that stuff and compromised my health all over again because I learned nothing at that time.
Wow. So at that time, did you have an expectation working with her that it would heal you, or were you just kind of going out on a limb of might as well try?
Might as well try. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I didn't think into myself, oh, this is going to help me. She's going to help save my life. Or, I've been given a second opportunity. No, I was just like, might as well. So.
And then the second, I guess, stint of you going back to eating meats and things like that, and your health declining again, did you then kind of reinstill that diet regimen onto yourself, or did you go see the same person?
No, my kidneys have remained healthy, so to speak. I'm not in any level of kidney failure today, and I have not been since my time working with her. What happened is in 2016, I was told that I was diabetic. You're type 2 diabetic. I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Did you take insulin?
No.
Okay, I was about to say, I never remember ever you talking about that.
No.
Okay.
It was metformin.
Metformin,
And
okay.
so they took me and showed me something called My Plate and said, this is my plate. I guess it's no longer the food pyramid. Now, when you're diabetic, the dietitian will do something called My Plate and will show you how your plate should look. And they said you'll be a diabetic for the rest of your life. It is a progressive condition. It causes, in addition to heart disease, there's blindness, there's neuropathy, possible amputation, stroke, heart attack. All of these things are factors that are extensions of being type 2 diabetic. And I was like, well, no, that's not going to work. But I had a horrible diet. And what I mean by that, if it's something I like, I ate it. I didn't have a gluttonous diet, but it was not in any way a nutritious one.
Can we pause on that for a minute? Because I think that's so interesting. 20 years, first you have the kidney failure, and it was because your diet was not the best. And then you get cured.
Well, at first, with the kidney failure, we don't know what happened there. I went to the hospital.
Okay.
I went in the hospital with the kidney failure with complete system failure.
Oh,
so every organ in my body was failing at once.
Oh, okay.
So it was heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. Everything was shutting down. And so I went in ICU. They had to stabilize me. It was like, okay, you have congestive heart failure and you have kidney failure. Those were the two things that kind of stood out that couldn't be managed in my hospital stay. So I was not diabetic, did not have high blood pressure, none of those digestive issues initially in the system
Okay.
failure. Something had attacked my system and they could never figure it out.
Okay.
That caused the system failure.
So I guess
Fast
my better question is, so 2016, you knew that not eating meat, you went back to eating it. Do you feel like there was some emotional, psychological connection between just being ready to die and not having the best diet? Like, was there something internal that you feel needed to be worked on, or is there any question around that?
I did not identify that to be the case at the time, if
Okay.
that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I didn't have the intelligence or emotional intelligence at the time to make that connectivity, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if I was living per se.
Mhm.
I was existing. And
Mhm.
that ability to make those kind of decisions came from not necessarily having a real value for life,
Mhm.
just doing life, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Waking up every day, going through the motions, but not assigning or assessing a value to my specific life, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it was just like, okay.
What do you think led to that?
Um, oh, that's a deeper story. We have time?
Yes, we have time. That's why I'm going there, Tomika. I'm going to get you to the conversations we have on the phone, and we're going to crack this.
We've just been peeling
Oh.
back the layers until
Right.
now.
Oh my goodness. Well, it goes back to that statement that you made, that you perceived me in school as being very grown, right? That is because I had an enormous responsibility at home when we were in school, right? So around the age of 26, 27, my mom inherited a huge responsibility. So she was
When
the
she
only,
was 26 and 27.
she was 26, 27 years old.
Not you. Okay, her. Okay.
No, when she was about 26, 27 years old, she inherited a huge responsibility. She was the only adult in the house with 12 children, right?
Wow.
So she had all of her sister and brother's children for the most part. And so we were living in this 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom situation. And I was her oldest biological child. Now, in that home, when this happened, I was about 8 years old. There was the same number of people, children in the house, older than me, as there was younger than me. And with the older children, she's not that much older than them at the time, right? But she has responsibility for everybody. And we're living in this situation. But the thing that was a constant and true is that I was her child. So when you have a situation where you have responsibility for other children, they have been traumatized because they no longer have their parent. There are behavior issues. There are all kinds of things that happen. The thing that she had control of was me. So when those children, when they needed extra whatever, she had to be that. When there were behavior problems, when there was disobedience, whatever happened, she had to be there, everything. And I became adult-like very quickly because I became her assistant,
Right. We get
And so
that.
all of these children that are in the family around my age and younger kind of became my responsibility, you know? And so by the time I got to high school, I was a little woman, not an experience of life. And I don't mean that in a sexual way by any means, but in a way that I had a lot of responsibility. I knew how to run a household. I knew how to take care of children. I knew how to shop. By the time I was 14, I was cooking for the entire household. I knew how to take care of babies better than the people who was giving birth to them, So I learned responsibility very early. And so I was just going through life. I was just doing stuff, taking care of things. you
Yeah,
know?
and one of the episodes we talked about us all being parentified, where our families relied on us at a very young age to help take care of the family. And Grace said, "Remember what you said about going grocery shopping with your siblings? What'd you say? People would say,
Well, people would just always ask me like, "Oh, is that your son?"
right,
Like about my younger
See?
brother or something, and I was like,
right,
I would imagine I
Yeah.
had him when I was like a baby. Like it's not
right."
possible. Like,
That is wild. It has only
because
been in recent
yeah.
years that it has occurred to me
what's
that I need to
strange,
finally in '96, when I moved out on my own and had an apartment, I was at a complete loss of how to prepare food just for me. I was used to cooking for this entire household of people, and it was so intimidating learning how to just scale that back to one human serving, because it's like, you don't have to cook 3 chickens tonight. What are you doing?
Mhm.
You
I had
know,
that problem too. Yeah. Everything was big for me because my mother raised me. You do for yourself, you do for everybody.
you do for
Um,
everybody.
it just is, and you would get in trouble if you didn't. So it
And you
wasn't
will get in
great.
trouble when you did. Yeah. Yeah. In that process, I've always considered everybody around me. I've always considered the loved ones, the family members, the extension. And so, yeah, I didn't, when I would make decisions about myself, it wasn't from the perspective that there was value. Just do it. Yeah, okay. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't,
Yeah, I really feel that deeply in that I had to unlearn that too of just
yes.
yeah, doing things because it's just for you and it's not for
Yeah.
anyone else. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't feel like it's worth it, like cooking a nice meal or decorating your home, whatever it might be.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The ability to adapt was huge. I could become a chameleon in whatever environment, just become a part of it, like wallpaper. Just put me in the room and I'll stick.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, when in making those types of decisions about my life, um, I didn't give into consideration of what that meant ultimately. I never made a connection between my actual experiences and what I had gone through in life with the value I had placed on me.
Mm.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind me asking, it sounds like you had a lot of layers of different kinds of trauma and kind of growing up being a parentified child, growing up being a
Yeah.
baby, raising other babies, and
Yeah.
never fully because I feel like people who do that tend to you seem grown, but then at the same time you remain a child even longer because of that. I mean,
Mm.
in the sense of being able to take care of yourself, learning how to
Right.
love yourself, and like it takes
There's a
longer.
there's a level of naivete
Mm,
that you don't completely shed. Like you have to grow up real fast, you have to do things real fast, and your experiences get ahead of your processing, if that makes
mhm,
sense,
mhm,
right? And you have to catch up rather quickly emotionally and mentally.
Yes, yes. I remember saying to myself in my 30s, I want to be a grown woman because on the exterior, I could do all the grown things, but
Right.
inside, I just didn't feel. And I think it's because when you do grown things and you don't go through the natural maturation
That's
process,
right.
you arrive at a certain level of experience, but like you said, intellectually, emotionally, mentally, you need time to catch up. Yeah,
You
you
need
can't
time to
just go
catch
and go
up.
and go. Yeah.
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 I didn't consider that I needed to be considered. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liz, tell about when we had an episode you discovered about needs.
About needs.
Please tell her, please.
I think was it the dating conversation we were having?
Probably, yeah.
And we were relating our discoveries in the dating process to how we were raised and how we bonded with our parents and our family and all of that. And we were saying, I think it's important that we recognize that we have needs. Everybody was just silent. We're all silent.
Like, we have needs?
We have needs.
You don't, it never occurs to you, does it?
Right.
Yeah. To
Well,
let
I
alone
was
ask
ashamed
for
if
it.
I
Yeah.
ever had a need, I was ashamed of it. So even if it came in my brain to actually ask somebody to help me or to
Yes.
tell somebody, even now, I'm not there yet. It's still a process for me. I can identify them, but to actually give somebody the permission to be a part of me expecting them to fulfill a need,
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
no, absolutely not. I don't expect you because I'm not gonna even hand it to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is something that hit me because we talk about our triggers and our wounds. I was like, you know what, Fatima, I'm going to tell the audience because I just discovered what my wound is to still work through right now. I have a disappointment wound.
Oh.
I have a lifetime and pattern of being disappointed. So now I rarely put myself in a situation where someone can disappoint me.
All right.
And that means I'm not gonna need anything really from anybody for too long. Tomika, you're muted, yeah.
I muted to scream. I
Okay.
needed that scream. I needed that scream.
Right.
Listen, let me tell you how toxic that is, that trait that you just described, and how deep it is for me. On our graduation night at Memorial Stadium, most people were probably thinking about the parties they were going to that night, what their futures was going to be like, what they were going to study in school, what's next. I sat on that field and decided that night that I was never going to marry and I was never going to have children. I was 17 and I didn't know what I was going to do the next day. I gave no thoughts about a career, a major, or school. All I knew is that I didn't want to be anybody's mama and nobody's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the removing yourself from the position of being disappointed, pull in the extreme. That means I've gone all the way to the shallow end.
Right.
You would not leave me out here to try to float. I'm gonna go on that solid ground where I know I can stand. 17.
Right.
And I remember just checking out on that field and dialing in like, look, I'll tell you something. You ain't got time to be nobody's mama. You've been doing that all these years. And you got time to be with nobody's wife. You don't even know what that looked like. So don't even try it, And so I made those two decisions, and over and over and over and over through life, there have been so many women at different stages of my life and their life that has told me that I will arrive at this time in my life and regret that decision. I'm still waiting on regret to show up. I have not regretted that decision.
And she has stood on that business ever since I've known her. She's like, I'm never getting married. I'm never having children. Was there something particular about our graduation night? Was there a disappointment that night? What do you think made you feel it at that moment?
My dad didn't show up. Wow. But I also didn't know he was dying. The reason he didn't show up was because he was dying and he didn't want me to know. And I was like, girl, your experience with parents, don't be one of those. You got one parent that's busy being a parent to everybody else's children, and you have another parent that his middle name should be disappoint my child. So I was like, you don't know what it is to be anybody's parent. Don't do that. Don't do it. And I did not. I did not do that. I was like, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
But here's what's tricky about that. I adore my daddy.
I don't think I've ever seen you cry, Tomika.
I've been writing this book,
Oh, and it's
and it's
helping.
making me cry a lot.
Oh, because she was always very
Yeah.
stoic. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been writing this book and been unlocking stuff. I'm like, where did you come from? What is that? Yeah. I'm writing this book. My sister and I talk about that now. She was like, oh, you discuss things that we never thought you would open up about. Writing that book has unlocked my subconscious in ways I'm like, what? You know, things that, because I was always a processor. Process what happened in the moment and get to the next moment, right? You don't have time to be sitting around here trying to figure out what just happened, move on to the next thing. And I was used to doing that. And then when I started writing this book, I had to consider all of the experiences in the spaces that they happen. And then I had to forgive some stuff and release some stuff. And there are people, the thing that I'm pushing through on right now is that space where you get to, where you say a lot of other people had it worse than you, and you try to devalue what you went through. You know, like, man, there are people who have gone through way worse than this. What are you tripping about? You know? And so in that space, you push back and devalue your own experiences in life because you feel like there's more value or more regret, I guess, and more pain for other people. And yours is not quite it, you know?
And I think it's because we weren't validated in the home. It was kind of like they
No.
needed us to be kind of strong and to keep
Yeah.
going. And so, like, what are you crying about? There's people
Right.
who've got such and such going on, or look at your sibling, he's struggling in this or she's struggling in that. And so
And to
when
have siblings to say what you just said, I don't think I've ever known you to cry. You know, to have my sister say that was another reflection of, well, what did you do as a child?
right.
Well, what kind of childhood did you have for real? What kid doesn't cry? You know,
right.
it's that kind of like, oh yeah, no, that's not my thing. I don't cry. You know,
Right.
and yeah, so my siblings were pretty much the same way. Like, I don't think I've ever known you to cry.
Well, I interrupted you. You were about to say you were in that moment. You were talking about your dad, and I think you were going to say something that you learned about that experience in hindsight, maybe.
Yeah. So I was sitting there processing. So his mom, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and his sisters came to my graduation, but it wasn't him, right? And the wall of silence around his illness, I'm his child, but nobody bothered to tell me, hey, your dad is not here. He's very sick and he's dying, right? They just kind of let me be mad at him and disappointed. Parallel to that, there's a thing that society does that have characteristics of what your parents should be in their roles. They should be, your dad should be protector, provider, you know, all of these things. Present. And he was none of those things, but I was a daddy's girl and I adored him. And there came a point where I had to decide what my value for our relationship was going to be. What society says that he should have been to me, or what I truly felt in myself about him. And so I had to let go of one of those things because they kept causing conflict in me. And I let go of society's perception. And I decided to embrace my adoration of my dad. So one day I questioned myself. I was like, when you look in the mirror, are you proud of the person you see? Are you proud of the way you treat people? Are you proud of your accomplishments? Are you proud of your compassion for other people, your ability to give, you know, do you think you're worthy? And my answers to those questions for me confirmed that there's so much about me that I don't get to be if he was not my dad, right? Because you're you for yourself, and then you get what you get from each parent. And if I tried to take any of that away, then I'm not the same person. And so I found value in the simple act of him being a part of the partnership that gave me life.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no bitter resentment or anger left. There's nothing but the adoration I felt because he was my daddy, you know? And so I couldn't let that relationship be defined by somebody saying he didn't pay child support, or he wasn't present, or he didn't help your mom, or I was like, no, that's my daddy. I love him, you know? And so that's what I so want for so many people that are struggling with their parental relationships, right? The one part of you that you can't subtract is the part of you that they contributed to. And if there's anything in your life about who you are that you hold value and space with, let that be enough. Society will tell you what the definition of a mother should be, what she should have done, how she should have stood, you don't know that she was a person before she had you. You know, I look at my mom and I know that she knew what it is to live in this life without me. She's still here, and I don't know what it is to live without her. I have no idea what that's like, but she was someone before she was my mom. And so whatever contributions she's made to the person I've become, that has to be sufficient, right? Whether society felt like as that 27, 28, those years that she had all that responsibility, that she made the best possible decisions for me, can't be quantified. I can't let that have any influence on ultimately the fact that she's my mom. Mm-hmm. So there's so much writing this book has helped me to figure out, to filter out.
Well, before we get to the book, there's so much that happened to get to the book. So I think we probably need to get into that.
Okay.
The whole movement. So
oh wow.
I'm not our movement. I don't mean Selma. I mean
I know.
Oh yeah, Digestive Rest. Yeah.
So in 2016, I started on this journey. What kept resonating in the back of my mind, my sole takeaway, and it was a very quiet voice. My sole takeaway after the kidney journey was the body could heal from anything. So it was just this low frequency that stayed with me, kind of right back there on the fringes, like you can heal from anything. You can heal from anything. And so I think there were a lot of levels in me that when I was told that I was diabetic and would always be diabetic, and that is something that cannot be reversed, that I took on as a challenge. Like, really, you know? And I don't think I made that decision sitting there in that moment, but I kind of think it was kind of this little seed that was planted, like, that's not what we're going to do, right? And so it wasn't until COVID, it was November of 2020, I was sick with COVID and I was absolutely dying. I knew that I was in this house alone and that I was going to die. I was certain of it. I felt the life leaving my body. And unlike the situation with my kidneys, the situation with COVID, I did pray. And my prayer was, I know what's possible because I've been there. My life has been on the line before. I know what's possible. I know that you saved my life before. I know that I'm dying because I know what that felt like too, to be dying. I said, so if you saved my life, I'll pay attention this time and I will share everything that I know about it. And that's what happened. I recovered from that and I started ordering books. I started doing research. I started reading, and I was down from 2020 until even now. I'm reading books. I'm watching documentaries. I am reading medical journals. I am in and out of rabbit holes, right? And I am proving more and more with the people that trust me and trust the information that I share with them that as long as you're still breathing, you can heal your body. Your body is intelligent. It was designed to work a certain way. If you give it the proper environment, you can recover, you can heal, you could change your situation, that everything that happens in the body is symptomatic of the environment that you create inside your body. One of the greatest misnomers that I hear all the time, that, well, you know, everybody's body is different. No, everybody's body is the same. It's the thing that makes us human. You are human because kingdom, phylum, class, family, order, genus, species. You're in that human category. You're not a lion, you're not a bear, you're not an ape, you're human. And on that factor alone, all of our bodies are the same. What's different is what we do to those bodies. What do you feed it? What's the velocity? What's the volume? What's the cadence? What do you drink? How do you rest? How do you exercise? That's what the differences in our bodies are. Skin color, environment, nationality, but ultimately still human, still skeletal. Your brain is not in your butt cheek, it's in your skull.
Right.
You know, it's right here.
Right. He's not
You
like
know?
everybody's got a different place.
Right. You're not an alien.
Right.
You know? So stop that. You know, your heart, all of our hearts are generally in the same place, liver, you know. So they're the same. But how we treat them, how we the environments we live in, how we go about day-to-day stuff. So we have different levels of impact.
Right.
But
So
everybody's body is the same.
Tamika and I had gone through a period of something happened in my life, which I withdrew, and that's what I typically do. And so we hadn't been in touch. And so we reconnected recently, and she was all afire, ablaze, and passionate about something that she'd been working on. So please reveal it to our audience.
Oh, digestive rest. So digestive rest is a concept that was revealed to me during all of my studies. I would read and do research and kind of drive myself batty, so to speak. I really thought a lot of times, because I was reading multiple things at once, that I was going crazy a little bit, you know. And that included the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, just I was studying different religions, different food types, eating based on your blood type. I was down so many rabbit holes. And so when I just started to meditate, I think, and just let everything settle on me, consistencies started to rise and stick out. And that is that digestive diseases, what we do to our bodies, what is on the end of our forks, are the ultimate determination of life and death. Like, I started studying, I don't know, hopefully a lot of your audiences are familiar with the circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is the 24-hour cycle of the day. It's a 24-hour life cycle of everything on the planet. And we are all tied, plants, animals, humans, we're all tied to the circadian rhythm based on our own unique role in nature, right? So we're all tied to earth, we're all tied to nature. What's true about even our organs and the cells in our bodies, they are tied to the sun, the circadian rhythm of life. And when you become acclimated to the time zone that you live in, your organs, your systems, your cells all become aligned, so to speak, with that environment as well. So when you move, for instance, if you move to a different time zone, over time, your body will acclimate to that new frequency to the sun in that area. And there are certain physiological changes that your body go through in a 24-hour period that really digestive rest suggests honoring that activity for optimal health. And I found it to be true. I found the people that I share it with, the people that I coach or teach now, they're like, wow, is it that simple? And I'm like, yeah, the true things in life are very simple. They're not complicated at all. We make them complicated. We want there to be some great big mystery. But the truth of it is we are mind, body, and spirit. And it's a very simple concept to honor the roles of those things and to live. And so now that's what I do. I teach people to honor how their bodies are designed to work. So much, and it's funny to me now because I see so much information coming out about the dawn phenomenon, and diabetics in particular are fascinated with this. They don't know the real reason they're asked to get up in the morning and prick their finger to see what their blood sugars are. What that tells your endocrinologist or your doctor is about that secretion of glucose from your liver that actually wakes you up in the morning, how your body has managed sugar or glucose overnight. And so we'll get up and we will eat breakfast, right? We'll get up out of bed and we'll eat breakfast. But when we do that, we're disrupting a vital process, meaning your liver has already secreted sugar. That is the thing that made you come alert. You've woken up for the day, and your pancreas and your kidneys are managing and balancing that sugar to energize your day. The circadian rhythm suggests that we eat with the sun. So around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the time zone that you live in, your body temperature, your internal body temperature starts to rise. It is becoming at what is called digestive level. It is getting to a heated temperature enough to digest whatever you ingest, right? And that is really when you're supposed to eat, between 11 and 2. You're supposed to eat with the height of the sun in the time zone that you live in. Well, most people don't do that. Most people get up and eat as soon as they wake up. I need some coffee, I need a bagel, I need a biscuit. We go through that. And that is predicated on the probably global belief now that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And when a simple clicks on Google, and you'll find out that that whole slogan is from the 1800s when Kellogg developed cornflakes. And it was their breakfast slogan. And they wanted to sell cereal. And they came up with, oh, breakfast is the most important meal so that you can eat their cornflakes. It had nothing to do with nutrition. There's no basis for nutrition in it. It's probably the most dangerous meal of the day because you're disrupting a natural process to get up and eat breakfast or to have coffee or to, eat a bagel or even an apple, to be honest. Any disruption of that trifecta of process between the liver, the kidneys, and the pancreas that early in the day is unhealthy for your body. And likewise, the same thing happens in the evening. Your digestive system goes to sleep around 8 o'clock. Your pancreas literally stops secreting insulin around the time that your pineal gland, your pineal, however you want to pronounce it, produces melatonin. And so that's the signal. That secretion of melatonin is the signal to the digestive system to take a rest. But if you've eaten after 7 p.m. in the time zone that you live in, and your organs or digestive organs have gone to sleep, and there's food on your body, your heart didn't get that message. Your heart is saying, there's something there. I have to get your body to a heated temperature. And most people don't realize that they create heart disease, hot flashes, high blood pressure every night in their sleep because their heart is doing this, it's not going to a resting rate. Your heart is doing this thing like, temperature, get up. I got to get that food off of your stomach. And we create these digestive disorders over time because we don't know the liver has a job, the spleen, the pancreas, the gallbladder, the kidneys, all of these organs have specific roles. And if you align your consumption of food and drink to honor when those organs need to do their job, you're creating an environment where they can help extend your life. Like for me, for instance, I've been obese maybe 4 decades, since I was about 12. I started cooking for an entire house by around 14. So I was learning to be a chef. Then I was the chef, the cook. And so I'm tasting everything. I'm constantly cooking. And that's not just one meal a day. That's all the meals in the household, right? I'm not going outside getting fresh air and exercise. I'm constantly in the kitchen. Either I'm cooking, I'm washing dishes, I'm shopping to cook. In high school, I graduated from high school at 240. That's clinically morbid obesity. I was greater than 60 pounds.
For you all to understand, it was a subject that until recently you didn't even talk about, right? The fact
Right.
that for you to be knowing that
Having this conversation.
at all, right, right. It was like the elephant in the room, you know?
Yeah, literally.
But you've had, I know, recent developments. Do you want to share them with the digestive rest and what's happened to you personally?
Yeah, so right now I'm in two things. And one thing you don't know about Fatima, I'm in a battle with my liver right now. So I was able to put my diabetes in remission. So in my digestive rest journey, and I don't tell other people to do this, I want to put that disclaimer out there right now. I don't ever make recommendations to people about medication, okay, or what they should be taking. I don't go there, right? But on January 1st, 2023, I decided I was not going to consume any more medication for any, and I was on 6 at the time: cholesterol, high blood pressure, metformin, Farxiga, all these things, right? I was like, nope, I'm not taking any medication prescribed or over the counter. And I stopped. Well, I continued with digestive rest and all the things I was learning about how to eat. And I continued going to the doctor every 3 months. And it was funny because they would say, oh, this is working so well for you. Great job, da, 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 da. And only I knew I wasn't taking those things.
Right.
so we saw, we
now they know.
Yeah. So we see the numbers, go down to a pre-diabetic numbers to down to, normal, right? So we see these numbers, these cholesterol, triglycerides, with the high blood pressure, all these numbers start to take this dive, right? And they are just really applauding, you're down 30 pounds, you're taking your medicine like you should. Very good, no, not doing any of that, but I was creating an environment for my organs to do their job, right? I was making space. I was like, okay, there's a thing you're supposed to be doing. And so I go to the doctor one day and the doctor goes, we want to do an ultrasound of your liver. There's an enzyme present that shouldn't be. They did it. They did the ultrasound, came back and said, you have non-alcoholic fatty liver. No surprises there. Been obese for 40 years. That's just what it is, okay? And so I'm on that journey. My liver, I've stopped losing weight, so to speak, because you metabolize in your liver. It's something most people don't know. If your brain is the computer, your liver is definitely the engine that makes your entire digestive system run. And mine isn't running. My oil change is so far past due, but I'm working on it. And that's all I can do is trust. I've done the research. I'm creating the environment to resolve the condition. And I'm having to trust. It wasn't created overnight. And sometimes I get frustrated and impatient, and meditation has really taught me to get centered. You did not create this condition overnight. You should not have the expectation that you're going to heal it overnight. But what I'm excited about, there's evidence. I see the evidence in my own body that is happening. And I'm going to tell you guys about this, but I wasn't going to reveal, I was only going to reveal it in the book, but 2 weeks ago,
I'm in bated breath. I'm like, oh gosh, what?
this is crazy. This is truly crazy. So something was happening, not sleep apnea, but something was happening in my sleep where it was completely cutting off my air. And I'm like, what's choking me in my sleep? I know what sleep apnea is. I went there, came past that. I know this wasn't that, right? And I'm like, something is wrong. So I go get it checked. They do x-rays, a lot of x-rays actually, but specifically of my spine. So they call me back, the clinic calls me back and says, hey, the doctor would like for you to come back in. They want to see you again. They want to take some more x-rays. I'm like, okay. I go in, I was like, I went in Monday before last. They called me Tuesday. I went back Wednesday. I go back in, they take me straight away and do spinal x-rays. Then they call me over, have me looking at the screen, and it was like, your back is broken. There's a crack in my spine, okay? And I'm telling y'all, it took my brain a full 20 minutes to catch up. So other physicians come in, you know, they're standing around me, they're talking, we're looking at these pictures. They wanted to take a second set of x-rays because they thought that there was something wrong with the first set. Like, we're not seeing what we think we're seeing. Now, keep in mind, back in 2008 or 9, I was told that I had spinal arthritis. There was a place about 2 or 3 inches at the base of my spine that it was just arthritis, right? So I go in there and they're like, we're trying to figure out how you're walking. I was like, what does that mean? You know, they were looking like, well, we see this and we're sure it is a broken space in your spine. And we're trying to figure out based on this, how you're walking. Guys, I go 1 foot in front of the other.
Well, that's how we live our life, right, Liz? Keep on going.
I literally could not process what they were saying. Like, it was like they were talking about another person, but talking to me. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, surely my spine is not broken. Like, my back ain't broke. What? Right? And so I wasn't being mean or obtuse. My brain had not caught up. Like, they're talking to you. This is about you. Dial in, click in, you know. I had to go through that for a moment. And it was like, so they took me to another room. We sat down and talked, and they showed me a normal spine next to my spine. And it was like the vertebrae at the base of your spine, there's no cartilage. That's gone. What's happening, what you're experiencing in your throat, they go up top of your spine. They're between the vertebrae there. There's no cartilage. You're moving in a way in your sleep that vertebrae is shifting. And that's the sensation, like something is cutting off and I'm like, how do we fix it? And it was like, we don't. That is a very old injury. I was like, okay, you know, and it was like the cartilage in those places is completely gone. Those vertebrae are moving. So they had this list of therapies. So I go to a clinic every Wednesday now at 10 a.m. to go through these therapies so they can slow down this progression that's happening in my spine. So I'm like, they started asking me about injuries. You know, there's people coming in talking to me, like trying to figure out if I'm in a domestic situation. And I'm looking like, ain't nobody ever beat me. What's wrong with y'all? You know, I'm literally, guys, trying to figure out what this could be, right? And I'm like, yo, you sure it's like broken? And I was like, oh, it's broken. There's, you know, and I was like, well, I don't do any weird sex stuff. And they was like, oh, no. I told them, I was like, they was like, that this is an injury. You were injured, you know, were you in a car accident that you don't remember? You know, there were 2 injuries from childhood Fatima, but they were from childhood. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've only injured myself twice in my life. And there's no way. And it was like, well, just tell us. Let us be the judge of that. I was like, do you know what a linoleum floor is? And they're like, yeah. I was like, so when we were growing up, we had linoleum on our kitchen floor. My mom had to get the floor repaired. And when they threw the linoleum out, we grabbed a piece of it to use for first base when we were playing ball in the street. They were like, okay. I was like, I was up to bat. I was trying to get to first base. My foot hit the linoleum. I slipped and fell on my backside. Knocked the wind out of me. I was like, because I fell straight back. It was like, what happened next? I was like, my uncle. It was like, how old were you? I was like, I had to be about 9 or 10, because this is when we were all living together. Like my mom had everybody. And I was like, I remember my uncle picking me up, taking me in the house, putting me to bed. And I stayed in the bed till I felt better, and life went on. You didn't go to the hospital? I'm like, no. You didn't go to the doctor? I'm like, no. It's like, okay, so what happened next? I was like, so then me and my cousins got skates sometime in the future, because the first thing happened first. The linoleum thing happened first. I was like, but our driveway was made of rocks. But there was a restaurant across the street from us. Their parking space around the restaurant had cement. We weren't allowed to skate in the street, but on Sundays when that store was closed, we can go across the street and skate in there. So me and my cousins was racing. Same thing happened. I was skating, my feet went from under me. I landed on my backside, knocked the wind out of me, just, what happened then? My uncle came and took me to the house, put me in the bed. And it was like, you never went to the doctor, you never got checked. It's like, hold on. You have to understand, if we weren't bleeding or something wasn't dangling, we weren't going to the doctor. So that wasn't happening. And so I was like, when I felt better, I got up, went on life as usual. It was like one of those times, and not both of those times, you crack your spine. And you probably should have gone to the doctor. And I'm like, we're talking about 40 years ago. And I was like, I had to stop and think about it. And I was like, medical technology being what it was 40 years ago, had I gone to the doctor, I probably would have been paralyzed. And so when I told my mom about the diagnosis and how they think this injury is, and they're really wondering, about it, she was very upset. Like, this happened to my child. How can I not know? Da, 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 da. I was like, slow down. Let's consider this. Let's look at it from the 50-foot distance, not right up on it, not because we're in it. Consider our lives back then. Had you taken me to the doctor, had they tried to fix it in Selma, and I come away paralyzed, you want a child in a wheelchair on top of everything else that was happening in the household at the time? I said, what we're going to do is take this as the miracle that it is, that I've remained upright and walking for the 40 years since that injury. And we're not going to question it. We're not going to feel bad about it. We're not going to get emotional about it. You're not going to feel guilty about it. I'm not upset. We're just going to go from here. It was a phenomenal thing to be taught. And it's so new. It's not even 2 weeks old for me. Knowing is not even, I've lived with it, of course, for 40 years. But knowing about it I'm still trying to process, your back is broken, right? And 2008, 2009, when they took x-rays and I went to the doctor then because my back was hurting. They only saw the inflammation. They couldn't see the crack. And they assumed there was arthritis that was causing me the pain, It's crack. And now that I've been eating better, my diet has changed. The inflammation has cleared. They could see on the x-rays that there's a crack there.
So are you in pain because of that, or you're completely functioning fine, but there's a crack in your back and it affects your sleep sometimes, or?
I wake up some mornings with low-grade pain in my back, in the base. Well, before I started this lifestyle change, I had to have a straight back chair in my room to help me get up out of the bed. And I thought it was arthritis and being fat and inflammation. And it was all of those things. But I no longer need a straight back chair in my room to get out of bed. I'm walking around just fine. What prompted me to go was to try to find out what was causing this thing in my sleep at night. Right here, sitting right here, talking, I'm in no pain.
So what actionable steps did they give you, or what can you do about that? Or is it something that you heal by not being so active, or?
No, we are doing what is called progression therapy. So they're starting out with this spinal alignment that they do every week. So the therapies are scheduled to get a little more intense as we go to try to get those vertebrae straightened out again. So there's going to be stretching and traction equipment and things of that nature. I guess we'll all find out together, how am I walking? Or how are you walking? I'm like, one foot in front of the other, maybe? I don't know.
Well, before I pass the ball to Liz, I just wanted to say that I feel like I had so much to learn just from everything you've shared so far. And I really like the fact that you look at things from a 50-foot distance and you
Yeah.
pause to always look at the positive. I feel like your mindset and mentality on your life is incredibly powerful and strong. And some people might not even be ready to hear some of the things that you've said, but I feel like it's things that if people are willing to pause and take certain mindsets like how you had of your dad, how you had of this crack in your back that you're looking at as like, hey, it could have been something else, but let's look at it as a miracle because for this much time I've been walking, I've been fine.
Yeah.
Which is so true. And I feel like I really admire your mindset around these things.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But Liz, do you want to guide us on a 50-foot perspective of
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us, as recent of a development as it is. And I really love that you've chosen to take charge of your own body and your health,
Yeah.
because it sometimes people can take what may seem an easier route, just, a victim mentality, and kind of be helpless to the circumstances, that is of their health. So I find that your story is very powerful. And I think a lot of people who are listening, they're either know somebody or themselves that are dealing with something health related. So I can see it being very inspiring for them to maybe consider another approach if they aren't already, of being more proactive with their health. So thank you.
Well,
Any other
just
questions?
Actually, I have a question for Liz. Is that okay?
yeah.
And
Yeah, of course.
Liz, and your work in women's health, is it?
Yes.
I had a situation in 2013 where I was dealing with bad fibroids, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my periods were a nightmare. And a lot of that had to do with my diet, unbeknownst to me. I think we categorize women's issues as all one thing, right? That every woman goes through the same thing. But I was sent to a specialist about my fibroids. There's this a minimally invasive procedure. I can't think of the name of it that they do, where they go through your groin and cut off the blood supply to the fibroids, and they pass your body through your period. Well, the specialist I was sent to, we were looking at my ultrasound pictures, and I had some pretty big ones. And what stood out to me in this digestive rest life that I'm in now, I go back to his questioning me. And he was a young physician. And I was looking at him like, you're a baby doctor, you know? But he was asking me about my dairy consumption. He had a lot of questions about my dairy consumption, and particularly the cadence of my consuming dairy, like ice cream and cheese and and milk and things of those nature. And I've always been a huge fan of dairy. I am a butter pecan specialist. I love it. And I haven't, in this lifestyle change, I haven't been able to have it, but I've always loved it, and I could not understand, he had this board and he was going on and on about my consumption of dairy. And then when I kind of questioned him about his questions, he basically gave me information about the consumption of dairy products in African American women, being the biggest consumers of dairy. And basically told me that if I didn't eliminate or significantly reduce dairy in my diet, that I would be back with fibroids because the estrogen, the artificial estrogen constantly given to cows, and my body already has an estrogen structure, and that extra estrogen in the dairy products that I was consuming had no place to go but my reproductive organs, that this would be a continuation of problems. In your work, what have you found to be consistent with fibroid forming problems in women?
That's a great question, because the demographic that the organization I work with, specifically, we work with Black and Brown women. And so there are so many different factors that affect not just fibroid development, but our reproductive health as a whole. And the
That's true.
largest, and you're right, the largest ones tend to be our diet, and all of the way that, especially here in the States, that our food is processed, the way that it is made. There are all kinds of things in there that we don't know, and that they're not required to, I'm sure through your research know that they're not required to list.
Right.
Hormone disruptors in our food, in our plastics, in our, even in our clothes, and so many environmental factors. And that's, certain demographics, they are at disadvantages too, because what is most affordable to eat? It's the foods that are chemically processed and, not whole foods, basically.
Not whole foods.
Yeah. So there's a lot going against us. So, which is why I think your story is so powerful, because it's on us to take charge, to make the decisions, within our capability, within our scope, to take care of our health. So yeah, I can see that a lot of dairy products and, not non-whole foods.
Yeah.
A big contributor.
It's a lot of lessons for sure. It is, I've learned so much, not just about what causes problems in our bodies, but just how our bodies were designed to work, to function. The probably most overworked organ in the bodies of Black and Brown people is the pancreas. That constant activity of insulin secretion, because we eat too much. The industrialization of food and the introduction of the food pyramid in the 1970s led to the largest rate in obesity in the history of the world in terms of time frame. And when it was discovered that a huge era had occurred with the onset of the standard American diet and that food pyramid, it changed again. And they went from 3 meals a day to 3 meals a day with snacks in between. So the 6 times that we were eating and activating that insulin, and the pancreas simply was not designed for that overload. And those misguided, however well-intentioned guidelines has devastated communities, particularly in underserved communities and Black and Brown people.
So why do you think that is, Tomika? If everybody was following that food pyramid, why do you think it impacted Black and Brown people if everybody was overeating? Why do you think it impacted us more?
It wasn't just what the overeating, it was the quality of the food.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just finished a documentary called The Magic Pill, and they talk about the Aboriginal people in the outback in Australia and the Native Americans in this country. And when they were colonized and isolated to only certain sections of an area that they used to be free to roam around. So in the outback, those Aboriginal individuals had full access to the land, and they lived basically in step with nature. They respected it. They only took what was needed. And the same with Native Americans in this country. They lived at one with nature. They only hunted out of necessity. They grew food. But what this documentary explores is when they were colonized and isolated and only into herded only into certain sections, they were then given commodities, right? Commodities have no real nutritional value. They are high in processed wheat, it's highly processed flour and sugar. And that's what their diets became. And so these people, they used to have beautiful, healthy bodies, are then diabetic and alcoholic and have heart disease. And it is a terrible reality. And in a lot of ways, that same behavior is reflected in poor communities. I remember growing up receiving government cheese. That cheese was highly processed. That powdered milk, that's everything, that stuff, that meat in a can, all of that stuff was highly processed, and we should not have been eating it, right? And I don't think people understand what is meant when they say a food desert. A food desert is a place that has lack of access to whole natural foods. You know, and somebody may go to Selma and say, oh, here's a Walmart, here's a Winn-Dixie. They got food. There's no food desert. They have processed foods. They have foods that has shelf life, that can be trucked in, you know, the Little Debbie's of the world, the Uncle Ben's rice, the syrup, those kind of things. But whole foods, enough for everybody in the community to have whole foods. If they, let's say, all of a sudden everybody woke up tomorrow in Selma and said, we're going to learn a whole food diet. Well, there's not enough food there for that. They'll run out of food very quickly, right? So that is, in fact, a food desert. They have access to all of the packaged stuff, but they don't have access to whole food, enough of it sufficient for sustainable life. So in poor communities, it's not the overeating per se, it is the consumption of the wrong thing, right?
All right. Well, first of all, Tomika, I want to pause for a minute and just say that you're in my heart, and I care for you so much. And hearing that diagnosis, it's taken me a while for it to like come down in me to receive. And so I'm very sorry to hear, but of course I'm praying for you, and I'll try to keep a 50-foot distance and not who off the episode. But so Liz, if you could take us to the last questions, what's the best piece of advice on down that we have?
Yeah. So I would like to ask you, what is the best piece of advice that you've received along your journey that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So when I saw that question, it gave me pause, right? Because I was like, oh, I have to get this right. And then I started thinking about it. And what I realized is that I'm oftentimes the person that's giving advice. There has not been a lot of moments in my life where I was given advice. And so for me, a huge piece of advice I received, I gave to myself in the decision that I was going to make this transition in my life, that this was going to be my new reality, that I was just going to have to trust that I was on the right path. What I said to myself was, trust yourself. Trust yourself. You've gotten this far. Trust yourself. And So that's what I'm doing. I'm trusting myself, because that hasn't always been easy. But then when I look back on it, from the decision with my kidneys, from healing myself from type 2 diabetes, all of it took profound trust in my decision making. And so trust myself.
Yeah, I can really
That-
relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
And it
sweet,
takes
Missy.
practice, right? To like hear your own intuition and like
Yeah.
lean into that voice.
Yeah, that's not always easy,
Yeah.
because sometimes the noise get really loud out there. What do you mean? Go find a job. Yeah, that's crazy, So
Mhm.
yeah, trust yourself.
Yeah.
So
And what
that's
would
it.
you say is your superpower?
Oh, wow. Obedience, right? I'm gonna tell you guys a story real quick. I've been telling a lot of stories.
I love it.
So my family, we grew up Southern Baptist, right? And I won't go into how Southern Baptist is different from any other kind of Baptist, other than the church that you go to is on a dirt road, right? To get to it, you have to leave the pavement and get on the dirt road.
Mhm.
And my family was very active in church, but I had a huge responsibility at home, so I didn't go to church a lot. What was a tradition in our family was that when you turned around 11 or 12 years old, you had to go on what was called the morning bench, when you had to go to these nightly revivals at the church so that you can find Jesus and get baptized. So me and the group of my first cousins that were around the same age, we were the 11 and 12-year-olds in the household at the time. It was our turn to be on the morning bench. It was our time to find God and get baptized, right? I did say I was a Southern Baptist. If it sounds strange to other Baptists, I get it. So this one particular night, we're in the station wagon with my mom, and she's taking us to Orville, Alabama, to go down to John the Baptist to revival. And she's giving us the spiel about none of you are ready. You haven't been reading the Bible like you should. I don't want anyone to come off the morning bench tonight, right? So we had some more Jesus finding to do, right?
Okay.
There was this guest minister was a pastor from a church in Selma, Alabama. His name was Reverend Flowers. I'll never forget this long. And he was the pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church in Selma, and he was the guest minister at John the Baptist that night for revival. So we all go in. The heathens go to the front of the church, and we sit on the front bench, and the services start, and they're singing, and then there's preaching, and all of the things are happening. I remember I'm sitting on the end of the bench. My cousins are sitting straight down from me. And I remember Reverend Flowers was in the pulpit doing his thing. And when they start to wrap up in their sermon, the voice change, it gets deeper, the sweat comes, and it's really intense. And he's coming down out of the pulpit, and they're singing and stomping and clapping, and the whole church is spirit-filled, right? I'm sitting there watching all this, like, wow. And I can't come off the morning mist today. So I'm sitting there, and y'all, I don't know what happened. All I know is what everybody tells me that happened. My next conscious moment, no lie, the next moment, I'm sitting there one moment, and I'm watching him step down out of the pulpit, and he has the mic, and he's doing his thing. When I'm conscious again, my arms are locked around his neck, and he and I are jumping up and down in the floor, shouting. How I got from seat to in his arms, I have no idea. But my mom told the whole city her baby got happy. My baby got happy. I was so embarrassed. Oh my God. I was so embarrassed. Everybody, every relative, everybody we saw, my mom told them that her baby got
spirit. right?
She got the spirit. Y'all, it is the thing that was, oh my God. I was like, Mom, please don't tell anybody else that story. I was so embarrassed. You guys can't even imagine. I think she thought the next thing I was going to walk on water. No. Fast forward 40 years later, which would have been 2023, there was a series of events that I would not go into. So between that time, after that happened, whenever I would go back to church, I would be sitting around like, am I going to get the spirit again? Like, is this going to happen again? I'm not a church goer. I'm not a church person, but whenever I would find myself at a church, I'll be sitting there waiting for something to happen. And nothing ever did until 2023. Not in church, but here in my own house. I had an experience where a relative told me that I was an intercessor. You know, I could stand in the gap for people. And I really wondered at the type of drugs she was using. Because I'm like, that's, you know, like what? She was like, you hold.
Because you're not religious, right? Are we still?
No, at all.
Right.
So I'm like, you know, whatever. But some things happened right here in this house that I was very conscious of that I don't know if I'll ever be able to properly convey. Like there were witnesses, there were people that can say this happened, and I don't know how to articulate what happened, but it was a spiritual thing. When you ask me about what my superpower is, I didn't always know that I have it, but I know it now, and it's non-religious. It has nothing to do with anything like that, but it has to do with my ability for obedience. And when something is imparted or given to me, I cannot be moved. Meaning, if I know something, I know it. I don't minimize your opinion or your position on that thing, but I don't entertain it. It does not move the needle for me. It was that kind of knowing that saved my life in kidney failure. It was that kind of knowing that helped me reverse type 2 diabetes. That it was that kind of knowing that is sustaining me in this journey. When I know, I know. And I don't consider alternatives. It is that kind of obedience that I wish more people had and called it faith. That when you know something, if you truly believe in it, if you truly have faith on it, that you stand on it. When I tell you something about digestive rest and what will happen to your body in the process, and you go do the other thing, and then you call me and tell me.
Anyway, let's get on with the questions, Liz. What's the next question? How can our listeners?
Liz, Grace, that is so much fun for me. I'd be like, cheers.
And she has no mercy on you either.
I do not.
She's like, I told you, and you did the opposite. Going forward, Liz.
I'm like, okay, I told you.
That is so funny. You know, I've never been a big breakfast person, so I feel very validated right now.
Oh, good.
Follow that natural instinct, Grace.
Oh, I mean, I would love, before we wrap up, to talk about the book that you mentioned earlier.
Well, How the Decision to Die Saved My Life. There's nothing, Grace, I'm more intimately familiar with than being obese. I've been obese longer than I've been anything in life, right? And it is a condition I've lived with since I was about 11 or 12 years old. And so there is no good, but all the bad, ugly, and trials that comes with obesity. I know what it is. I know what it's about. I know what it does to you physically, spiritually, mentally. And How the Decision to Die saved my life. I explore that and how unnatural it is, and how humans and the animals that depend on humans for survival are the only creatures in God's creation that don't subscribe to nature for weight management. We have to have artificial weight management because we have used our free will to live out of step with nature. We don't respect it, we don't honor it, and we do not adhere to it. And because of it, we're sick and we're dying, and our pets are in the same condition, and the animals that we groom for food are also in the same condition. It is the most unnatural state that you can be in as a human person, is not to honor the body, your body, the way it's designed to work, and to have that kind of power and influence on your offspring, to have children and to feed them that way and to teach them that way and to raise them that way. It is criminal in nature to be that way. There is nothing sexy, attractive, desirable about obesity. It is a disease, it is unnatural, and there is no way you can live in a high vibration or frequency in a body that is that out of order with nature.
So the name of the book, the title is
How the Decision to Die Saved My Life.
And you also have two other books. Can you tell us about where to find those, the title and where to find them?
So on my juicing journey, I wrote a book of just recipes, really. It's called The Elixir of Life. It's also the name of my juicing business that has been an outgrowth of Digestive Rest. I just started juicing for me personally, and people would ask me about my recipes and what are you using and that kind of thing. So I decided to put them all in a book. I subscribe so heavily to the use of ginger, and I used it in all of my juicing recipes. And so I wrote that book. It's called The Elixir of Life, Ginger Juicing Recipes. And I have a ebook called The Vibrant Vegan, Simple Recipes that I use. It is on Kindle only. It's not a hardcover book or hardback book. And then there's a Digestive Rest journal. All of those are on Amazon. And on the Digestive Rest journal, I wrote that or came up with that design out of my own journey, what transitioning into digestive rest was doing. And so journaling just was an organic adaptation to the overall journey.
In talking about your books, we'd love to know for our listeners where they can find more about you, your socials maybe, or any announcements about when your next book is coming out.
My plan is to publish How the Decision to Die Saved My Life in December of this year. I have an author's page, Tomika Rayford, on Amazon.com, where everything I've published so far can be found. Digestive Rest, Health and Wellness is the name of my nonprofit. And there's a page, Digestive Rest, Health and Wellness on Facebook or Digestive Rest on Instagram. Of course, I am Tomika Rayford just on Facebook. And then digestiverest.org is the website for Digestive Rest. And you can reach me at tomika@digestiverest.org.
And along with your book coming out, are there any other upcoming projects or things that you're excited about?
So I have seminars from time to time in underserved communities, and I do workshops. I'm working with a group of people that would like for me to come to Huntsville. Right now, we don't know when that is going to happen, but so far I've been going to Selma because for me, charity starts at home. One of the things I'm deeply concerned about in Alabama, in the Black Belt, in Selma in particular, is they are double the national average in terms of renal failure, amputations, diabetes, obesity. It has really ravaged the area. And despite all of the organizations and the studies and the all of the things they have going on, correcting these conditions is a very simple process, which is to live in alignment with the way your organs are designed to function.
This has been a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I've learned so much. I'm sure we've all learned so much, and we've come a long way, baby. You know that saying? We've come a long way, and I'm
finally, I feel like I'm adulting.
Right. We're grown now. Grown-ish, maybe.
Grownish.
So thank you so much for coming on. It's been fabulous.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Liz and Grace, and it's been so cool meeting you guys. I love it.
I'm about to go and buy all of these books right now.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, we're going to get the books, and we're going to look forward to following you as your journey grows and as you touch so many people everywhere.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. To learn more about today's guests and find related links and resources, visit the episode page at nexusexperience.com. You'll also find our full podcast archive and a free 10-page workbook with 4 powerful journal prompts to help you reconnect with yourself.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave a review letting us know. Sharing the show with friends is also incredibly helpful. You can find us at Inside Coffee Break on Instagram and TikTok. For updates, subscribe to our newsletter on Substack via the footer of our website at nexusexperience.com. Today's show was edited by our co-host, Grace Chung. We appreciate your love and support. See you in the next episode.